the 1980s, ornamental fishing became a lucrative industry in Les Village on the north coast of Bali. Local fishermen used potassium cyanide to catch the fish, but after many years the damage this was doing to the reef became obvious and was having a negative impact on the local industry. Pa Eka, the local head fisherman, and some friends decided to form an organisation and learn about barrier net fishing, which was a non-destructive way to keep the local industry alive. It was after this successful transformation that they then decided to start a process to restore the reef. Although they had many failures, by 2007 they started to have some success. Soon they started to build artificial structures to grow the coral before transplanting to the reef. From this, Sea Communities was established and now, in partnership with the University of Singapore, run an annual reef restoration and monitoring program called STAR, which stands for Scientific Trial Active Reef Rehabilitation. Today, Sea Communities offer opportunities for people to get involved in the program, supporting the rehabilitation of the reefs and learning from local fishermen about their experiences.
We are doing 2 times a day. Tomorrow will be orientation. The day after we'll be going to the International Coral Reef Garden, and we will also be going to see a bio-rock structure.
I was almost half expecting, given what we'd learned before coming here, that the reef might be a little bit sort of damaged and really visible, but it looks pretty healthy.
Yeah, it was less dead coral than I had imagined by the way everyone was talking. So there was a lot of color, a lot of little fish. So I was happy about that.
It wasn't much different to some of the dive sites that we've done at Ahmed and Toowoomba and other places like that.
I agree.
Similar type of species, like you saw, what was it, the
leaf scorpion fish.
Yeah.
Plenty of nudibranchs.
Saw a couple lionfish, clownfish.
All that butterflyfish, and lots of baby butterflyfish. So if a butterflyfish is an indicator if the reef is healthy, to see the babies must mean that it's healthy.
And the second dive, so that was really interesting, actually going out to those artificial reefs and even on the way out there, seeing some of those concrete structures that they've made, and watching them showing us how to scrape away.
To identify what was a coral and what wasn't at times was quite hard. So you're like, I don't know if I should be doing this. The corals take so long to grow. Some of them like 10 centimeters per year, so all this other stuff will grow over the top of it, and that's why we had to do what we did. On day 2, Sea Communities provide metal frames that they use for creating coral growing tables, and that we would use later to grow our own corals. After giving the frame a coat of enamel paint, we were shown how to lay out the rope to create the base for the coral concrete settlement plates. The rope was laid out in a grid fashion, appropriate to the size of the settlement plates, which we then cable tied onto the rope. To affix the corals to the settlement plates and later the reef, the local community leader, Pa Eka, developed a mix of black and white cement and a type of glue that created a suitable adhesive they called Eka glue. The Eka glue was then filled into plastic bags for transportation and piping underwater. Our table was taken out to Eastern Reef, and using the cement, we planted our own corals on our settlement plates.
We swam out to where the coral nursery was, and we cut the corals that have been growing on the nursery and put them in the baskets to replant for permanent location later in the day. So the process was we had to clean the substrate with a wire brush so that the glue could stick to it properly, then place the coral from the nursery into the glue, and then take photographs from the side and the top with the measuring stick so that it can be monitored over time.
To see how much it grows.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was interesting to see when we were out there that the the fish are
They're
swimming
very-
around
yeah.
are really inquisitive, and they're actually coming up. Even while you were planting some of the, like, sticking some of the coral down, and I was holding some at one stage, or it might have been for Paul, but the wrasse were actually coming up and swimming around, and they were getting the coral.
And when we had to take the photos to see the measurements of the coral, the wrasse were like swimming all up in the camera because, I don't know, they were following the coral, I guess.
We were introduced to an alternative method of re-establishing coral reefs by a group of local fishermen called BioRock, which had been trialled to the west of Les Village. BioRock is an artificial reef using steel electrode structures that has a current passing through it, causing dissolved minerals to crystallise on those structures and creates a limestone-like material that forms the coral reef and accelerates the growth of corals. After learning about the history of the trial, the fishermen took us on a dive where they showed us firsthand the results of using this method.
We rose early one morning to get our hands dirty assisting the locals with salt farming. Mud is placed in a large dish and used to filter the salt water and clean it of its impurities. This filtered water is laid out on black plastic to evaporate, leaving the salt to be harvested. The mud is then spread over segregated areas to dry out before being used again.
Diving. Apa hobi kamu? Apa hobi kamu? Yeah.
As part of the coral restoration program, we conducted butterfly fish surveys. Butterfly fish can either be obligate, meaning they only eat corals, or facultative, meaning they eat corals and other smaller marine animals. If there are no corals, there would be no obligate butterfly fish. So by counting butterfly fish, we can get a good indication on how healthy the reef really is.
First dive, where we were, there was a really strong current. We're holding on by our fingertip on the coral table. We attempted it, but we got about halfway and the guides were like, time to turn around, it's too strong.
Bye.